So something has given me a little bit of an interest, and I wanted to sort of explain to certain people why their opinion is wrong. Like I don't already do that all the time anyway. So roll the tables. So I have been looking into animal abuse and sort of seeing the different sides of it. One of the videos which I came across was about a rescue centre in America, and these rescuers will take dogs in that have been involved in dog fighting, and they will try and get them back to health, and obviously passed on to better owners and that sort of thing. And the video which I watched, you can see below. It was only, I'll put a link to it by the way, it was only when I was looking into this issue, and through various videos, and I found a comment from someone which made me giggle, and it's a comment which I've heard quite a few people say, and that is that animals, they're not like part of your family. And I personally couldn't disagree with that anymore, and that's why I wanted to tell you my story. So my story is that when I was about, I think I was about 10 or 11-ish, like back in the late 90s, and my mum and dad started talking about getting a dog, and of course me being the typical child was like, oh my god, Leah, let's go and get a dog, it'd be dead good and everything. And this all came about because my brother had been reading something or something like that, so the whole debate came up, and both my mum and dad in front of me were like, we can't get a dog, it's a lot to look after them, and who's going to walk it, and all the usual sort of things. They came home one night, and they basically turned around to me and they said that the microwave in the kitchen wasn't working. It was. There was nothing wrong with the microwave in the kitchen, but they made it look like the microwave wasn't working. They made sure that I saw it wasn't working, and I think what they'd actually done was just turn the power off to it. So obviously no lights were coming on, it wasn't doing anything. If you turn the dial, nothing was happening. So a little while later, like a couple of days, and they say about this microwave that they found, and they're going to go and pick it up, and it's in a town called Elton. I think it was Elton or something like that. At the time, there was a real high profile court case going on, and it was about a girl who was from Elton, and she'd been babysitting over in America, and some things had happened, and there was this whole court case and everything. I think her name was Louise Woodward or something like that. I can't remember exactly because it was that many years ago. So we drove to go and get this microwave, and we went to Elton, and we went past the pub, which is often seen on the television over here, because her friends and family would often be in that pub, so it's a perfect place for them to get interviewed and everything. So we went past, and we saw like a couple of people and interviews and everything like that, and we went round to this family's house, and we went in their back garden, And my brother, my mum and my dad went over to the shed at the back of this like courtyard thing, and there were Dalmatian puppies, and I was just like, oh my god, they have dogs. And they're like, yeah, it's great, isn't it? So they all went over to the shed and left me with these dogs. And you know, if I'm with puppies anytime, I can't help but be happy, because puppies are just ace. So I sat on the back doorstep, and I could hear them all over in the shed, and they were saying like, oh yeah, this is the microwave, and they were talking about this microwave stuff, and I was just mesmerised by these puppies. And one of the dogs came over and, you know, had a little sniff around me, and then climbed up on the step next to me and just sat next to me, you know, just wanting to be stroked, just wanting some attention. And he was quite close to me, like, already. And so yeah, I carried on stroking this dog, and then about a minute later they all come back over and they turn around to me and they say, well, actually, we're not here about a microwave, we are here to get a puppy. So I was like really, really happy about this. And you know, my mum and brother went looking at all these other dogs that are in the courtyard, and I was just still sat here stroking this dog. And when they came over to me and said, you know, which one do you want? And I was like, well, I kind of want this one. You know, he's sat next to me, he's cool, he's a nice dog, I want this dog. And the owner came over and was saying about, you know, this dog has a walleye, his name is Blue Eye, like the letter I, because he has one blue eye and one brown eye, so Blue Eye, and it fits. It kind of took a little bit of persuading. I think it took about 5 minutes of me giving the look of, I want this puppy. And it worked, and we got Blue. So we brought him home as a puppy, and he lived with us. He lived with us when we had the family home, and that was up until about 2000 or 2001. And then because my parents got divorced, we obviously had to go our separate ways. So Blue would travel with me, because the agreement was like Monday to Friday I would be living with my mum and Blue would be with me, and then of a weekend I would spend that with my dad and Blue would come with me. So me and Blue were always together, and you know, we would often share a bed, which Blue loved, because he enjoyed being just wrapped up in the quilt. And he developed this really annoying trick, which was he would get on his side with his paws against the wall, and he would be quite close to the wall, and then because it was only a single bed and he's like lying next to me, like his head is there but facing the wall, and I'm just like either on my back or on my side facing like the rest of the room. But he would have this thing of just ever so slowly but really, really strong, just pushing against the wall. So either the bed would move, or I would end up moving and have like that much room left. And it was just, you know, at the time it was just like, oh my god, I hate you doing this. But he was just having his fun. Blue, I moved out of my mum's and moved into my dad's, and the arrangement was, for some reason, that Blue would live with my dad, because my dad was often lonely. So Blue went to go and live with my dad, and I moved to living with my friends, like out of town. And then over the years that I was living there, you know, I would call back and see Blue whenever I could. But one time I went back and he had this It was like what you would call a kennel cough, only he hadn't been in kennels. Um, it could be that, you know, you'd take him out on a walk and he'd just have to stop and cough. It would probably never produce anything, but it was just an annoying cough, and it did irritate him. You could tell in his eyes, because he'd look at him and be like, oh, I'm fed up with this cough. And he put on loads of weight and everything like that. So Blue came to live with me in the house with my friends, and again we'd share a bed, but this time it was a double, so if he did stretch out I could just move on to the other side. And then Blue went back to my dad's. I moved back to my mum's, and that's when my brother got the dog that we have now, which is Tilly. And Tilly is a Jack Russell and is doing really, really well. We love Tilly. I was at home one day and I wasn't really doing anything. I was just on my computer, and I got a phone call from my dad. I'd been over to see Blue before this, not that long ago, because he'd started developing a lump at the base of his tail, which is just above the bumhole, and the lump was a little bit of a worry. So my dad had booked him in with the vets, and I got this phone call off my dad, and he just said, it's not good news. And I was like, what? He said, well, I've taken Blue to the vet, and Blue has cancer. The phone call, I was fine. Not now. The phone call, I was fine, because my dad went on to say that basically the tests had come back from the vets and this cancer had gone a little bit too far. It was spreading down the backs of Blue's, down his back legs. It was affecting him in a bad way. You know, he couldn't go on walks. You know, he would rarely get off the couch. You know, if someone knocked on the door, he'd bark still. He wouldn't much get off the couch. And you know, Blue was always one of them dogs that, like, if someone was at the door, he would be barking, and even if he knew who was at the door, he would still be barking. And you know, he'd go over, and you know, I like, even not long before he died, even when he still had this cancer in him, and I went over, he was still that happy to see me, that like he would smile, and you know, his teeth would be showing and his tail would be going, and he'd jump up at you. And then the sort of towards the end, you know, Blue would come over to see me because I just walked in, and you know, his tail would be sort of wagging, I suppose, as best possible, but he wouldn't jump up at you because he knew that his legs were going. You know, and then so this phone call, my dad was on with me, and the cancer had gone too far. It couldn't be treated, and basically things were only going to get worse. So the vet just mentioned the option that, you know, it would probably be more humane to get Blue put down, because he was only going to be suffering more than he was. So my dad eventually had phoned up the vets, and he phoned me afterwards and just said, you know, I've had to make this decision. I'm so sorry, but you know, Blue can't go on anymore. The phone call, I was fine. After the phone call, it sort of hit home, and I was a bit like, oh shit, I'm going to lose my dog here. Blue had been with me for 16 years of my life. We'd had the good times. There had been bad times, like the time when Blue was out on a walk one day, and there was a field and a road next to the field, and Blue ran out into the road and got hit by a car. He was fine. He got checked over by the vet. There was no internal damage or anything, and this was years before getting the cancer. But I went over to my dad's that day when it had happened, and I was sat with Blue and stroking him and everything, and he was loving it. He was like lying across my lap or sat up next to me looking at me and everything, and it was lovely. And then my dad had gone to bed, my brother had gone back to my mum's, and I'd said I'll stay over and I'll spend the night with Blue on the couch or whatever. I moved onto the other couch, and Blue looked over at me as if to say, like, come on, I want some sympathy here because I got hit by a car today. And he started whimpering at me, and he'd only stop whimpering if I went over and I was paying him some attention. That boy had standards. So I got the phone call off my dad, and I was really upset afterwards. And Tilly had never actually seen me cry before, and it was so funny because she was sat next to me on the bed all the time I got the phone call, and I think she could tell that I was getting a little bit upset, and she came over to me and she was just like, I'm next to you, I'm here. And then after I hung up, and my eyes just turned into a waterfall, and she jumped up at me and she was licking my tears, and she kept her paws on my chest, and even when I'd stopped crying, she was still wagging her tail, looking at me as if to say, like, I'm here, you don't have to be really upset, I'm here. I got a phone call about 2 weeks later off my dad. Blue had made it to the back garden quite a few times. For some reason my dad had taken it upon himself to decide that Blue had miraculously got better. He cancelled the appointment for getting Blue put down. That time was horrible for me, because this whole thing went on for about a month of me, every time I was on the phone to my dad going, it's not fair, it's really not fair, and as much as it breaks my heart to say it, but Blue has to go. He's suffering, he's not enjoying life, and that's not what it's about. So about a month later I get this phone call off my dad, and he says, I've rebooked the appointment, and I'm going to stick to it. And he gave me the date, and I said, well, do you want me there? And he said, well, it's completely up to you if you want to be here. He told me on that phone call that it was going to be a difficult time, and I knew it was going to be a difficult time. I never once put myself under the impression that this is going to be great, but I made the decision to say yes, I will be there. The day came round, and I remember I got a taxi over. My mum and my brother had decided that they didn't want to be there, because it wasn't going to be pleasant, and of course it's not nice to have your last memory being that you're saying goodbye to the pet. So yeah, it was difficult, but it was a decision that I decided to take. So I remember I walked in, and Blue was lying on the couch, and there was like this sort of bed sheet thing laid out on the floor, which my dad had explained to me that, you know, when Blue's gone, he will be laid out on this, and, you know, we'll take him in the back garden and we will bury him. So I was like, oh, okay. So me and my dad spent a bit of time together with Blue, and, you know, I sat next to him on the couch and just held him and stroked him, and in my best way, you know, I tried to say goodbye to him. And one thing I did, and it was, you know, some people will be thinking that was really stupid, but I thanked him, because we had spent a lot of time together, and you know, I'd enjoyed his company and we'd been through a lot. Some neighbours of my dad's came over, so they came in, and, you know, we hugged and we said, you know, we'll support each other through this because it's not going to be easy. And then the vet turned up. At this point, I remember sort of thinking to myself, well, you know, we're down to minutes here. You know, the fact that my puppy, in a way, 16-year-old puppy, he's not going to be with me anymore, and it got to me. I was a little bit bordering on upset at that point, but, you know, my sort of poker face came on then, and I thought, you know, just stay strong, because, you know, Blue doesn't want it to be the last time he sees you, that, you know, you're sobbing your heart out and everything. And the vet took my dad into the kitchen and they had to sign the paperwork and everything, and the nurse came in and with all the tools and everything. So we got round Blue. I was sort of stood towards the back of the couch where Blue was laid out. There was one of my dad's neighbours in front of me. Then there was like the vet, my dad, and I think the other neighbour was stood behind the couch. Blue did this really weird thing, and it always gets to me. Blue did this really strange thing, and it was like he knew. He knew that, you know, this was his time to go. He had his paws out in front of him, which isn't too unusual for Blue whenever you used to take him to the vet, because his paws would be in front of him trying to stop him from getting in the vet. But he did this really weird thing, and he just did this look around of everyone. He looked round, and then he looked at me and just put his head, why can't I speak? He put his head down on one side, and the vet was going up and down his arms trying to find a vein, trying to find a working vein. In his old age, Blue's veins had basically started to collapse. So the vet had shaved off on Blue's right arm, this little square, and he was feeling for a vein, and he was like, no, I can't get a vein in this one, so he tried on the other one and shaved it off. And, you know, put the needle in and did the injection and everything, and Um, Blue just closed his eyes, as you would. He finished doing the injection, and the vet got his listening thing, I forget what they're called. He listened to Blue's chest and said, "There's still a heartbeat. I'm going to have to do it again." So he did a second injection, and you could sort of see Blue had taken his last breath. His body just went limp. And then, of course, we had the task of, dealing with ourselves, being as upset as we were. And, obviously having to try and bury Blue, which wasn't a good thing either. But it was only a couple of weeks before this had all happened, when my dad had first told me about getting Blue put down and everything. Someone posted to me a link to a poem which is called Rainbow Bridge, and to this day the poem still gets to me, because it is such a nice poem, and I will put a link to it below. It's always a nice thought that your pet has gone onto this place and is doing fine, but the main part of the poem that gets to me, and is still a thought which I in a way cling on to, is that I will meet Blue again someday, and I don't want to bore you with my beliefs, but part of me does want to believe that there is like an afterlife sort of thing, and that the people that we miss from our lives, we will meet them again when we meet the end of our lives. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I think that's it.